Steve, and in fact everybody on stage here, you all undertook an enterprise that you must have had a tremendous sense of responsibility about. It's amazing to me, Steve, in the press conference you said that it was mystifying to you, and it's amazing to me that in the 21st century it's taken this long for a film of this nature to actually really tell the story of slavery. I mean, we had roots in the 70s, but why has it taken cinema so long to actually finally tell the truth?
I think it's obviously a very difficult historic moment which happened in America. Hugely shameful, hugely painful, and it was difficult, obviously, to deal with for such a long period of time, hugely. And I think it's one of those things where right now there's a thirst to sort of reconnect with that past in order to sort of see where one's going and where one's at. And I've said this before with the situation with Trayvon Martin, the unfortunate situation with Trayvon Martin, with having the first black president, Barack Obama, the 150th anniversary of the abolition of slavery, 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, the voting rights being revoked. I think that it's created this kind of perfect storm, unfortunately, or unfortunately, where people are now looking at that past and trying to find out where we're at and where we've been and where we're going to. So now is the time. Previously, I think, it was very, obviously it's very, very difficult and very painful, and I think it was stuck somehow. Not to say that people have not attempted to make films about slavery, absolutely, but for some reason, this one got through. I don't know, I'm not too sure why.
I learned today that you have a personal family tree. Mm-hmm. That you can trace back to through your ancestors to slavery.
Oh yeah, my mother's side, yes, the first person from Ghana, yeah.
How long have you had that, and how long has this desire to kind of come to terms with this subject been brewing inside you?
Well, I think it's been brewing inside me since I had consciousness, and in a way, in a strange way. Someone asked me the question the other day: when was the first time you came to understand, or when was the first time you heard about slavery? You as a person, and I could never remember. All I could remember was shame and embarrassment as a person, as a child, as a young person. That's the only thing I could think of. And from that moment on, when you discover, certain aspects of your past. That's when things start to that's when you start sort of thinking about things in general. I think you become pretty political or pretty reflective at a very, very early age. And things like Bobby Sands, which we did with Michael Fassbender, things like that just become very interesting to you in general, what's going on politically in the world. And therefore, yeah, I'm going back to when I was, 5, 4. Well, that's when things start. That's when things start. When you get an idea of what's going on around you. I apologize.
Well, I was planning to ask Chiwetel a question in a second, but I have one last question for you, and that is, it would have been very easy perhaps to have made this film with a kind of righteous anger, but that isn't the feeling that I get from the film. That isn't the approach that I feel you took. There's a certain distance, a certain coolness about things. We see some truly horrifying things on screen, but there's almost you sort of refrain from moralizing about it, and I'm just interested in how you approach this, the actual shooting of this.
Well, it's one of those things where I wanted to tell a certain, this word truth, I don't know, whatever, I'm going to throw it away for 5 seconds, but I want to understand it. I wanted to sort of engage with it. I could only refer to how I approached it as like, going into someone's apartment blindfolded. And your feel, your touch, your senses, these things take over from the obvious, because this obviously will make you sort of interpret things in a way which sometimes is a falsehood, because the morals come into play. You have to be honest, you have to be brutal, you have to be direct. Otherwise, you're kidding yourself. So I wanted to touch and feel things, see if they were real and how they were. What was the texture? What did it feel like? What was it raining? All these little details, microscopic details, bring you to a situation where you can actually be not afraid and just be direct. And I just think, you know what? I didn't give a fuck. I didn't give a damn. I really didn't give a damn. I didn't give a fuck. I didn't give a damn because often is the case, people are too careful. But also the situation is, there's a lot of lies out there. I mean, we could have made him into a hero. We could have made him do certain things, but no. Solomon Northup was a human being, and he survived an unfortunate situation. And unfortunately, a lot of people didn't survive with that unfortunate situation, so that's the way we had to do it. And I'm going on a bit, but that's how it is. Forgive me.
All right. Chiwetel, I just wanted to ask you something about your performance. Steve said that he saw this film as a story of survival, and your character's the ultimate imperative of everything was to survive. At the same time, you are never truly submissive to your situation. You're never truly submissive to the people that have power over you. And I'm interested in that tension in your performance between the absolute need to survive at all costs and the refusal to completely submit. There are certain moments where you're genuinely defiant, despite the fact that your ultimate imperative is to survive. So I'm just interested in how you worked for that in your performance.
I think it was, for me, it was always a question of his nature. I always found that I was trying to get as close to Solomon as I could. And that's a part of his book, that he has a personality. He has something that I have tried to define and tried to talk about, and I'm still thinking about. It's a kind of ongoing thing. But there is, he has, I think, in his nature, a love of life and of his relationship to life that is unbreakable. He has a certain what we would call, I think, just a spirit, and that is, it can't be removed, and which is why it always struck me as a story about everybody and about all of, just about what human respect means, and that he is somebody who can't shake that, even in danger, and that's his sort of tension. He's a person who is. Who sort of starts off in the belief that he's in a battle for his freedom, but I think realizes, as he does in the book, that he's in a battle for his mind, and that creates a completely different kind of tension for him.
I'm going to ask the audience to give us some questions now, and I'll repeat the questions just to kind of speed things up. Yes.
It seems that on the surface, your creative.
Please wait for the microphone.
It appears that on the surface, your creative leads aren't American, or at least what we see isn't American. And how do you think that perspective adds to the story you're trying to tell?
I mean, I didn't know there was too much difference between Americans and British and Italians and Germans and Belgian. I mean, no, there's no difference. No, I mean, if you're going to portray someone in 1841, you could be of any particular nationality, as long as you do your research and so forth. There's no characteristics you need for being an American now, particularly to portray someone from 1841.
Yes.
I have a question about shame. I'm shooting.
No questions about shame. We've really got to stay focused on.
He doesn't like it.
It's really important to me because I'm shooting a film soon on the subway, and I wanted tips for shooting on the subway because it seems like it'd be difficult.
I apologize. I spoke over your question. Please repeat it very quickly. Sorry, I apologize.
I'm shooting a film soon on a subway, and it seems difficult, so I want some tips for shooting on a subway.
Do it illegally.
Well, that's what I was planning, but I didn't know if there's any other advice for that.
Thanks for that.
All right.
Another question, please. I'm going to try further back because these people in the front just want to ask about shame. Yes.
Hi, Steve. How difficult was it to shoot the scene, the long take that in which Solomon was forced to whip himself?
Answer that question. You answer the question. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, that was obviously it's a actually harder scene to watch for me personally than it was to film. I guess because there was a lot of technical elements in the scene. We knew that we were going to film it in one take, so there was quite a few actors involved in the scene, so we all had to sort of keep our rhythms in our space. And then, you know, keep the rhythm with Sean behind the camera. There was the, yeah. Love Sean. And, you know, so there's that dance that's going on. There's distance between the players, the camera. And for me personally, I had to hit a mark, so I didn't, you know, hit Lupita, but we tried to get as close as possible. So all those technical things helped me sort of drive through that scene, make sure that I was sort of concentrating on all those things. Harder to watch, as I said, than it was to film because of that.
I don't know what to add to that. It's, you know, I think that there's so many things in this film that brought us closer to the experience. I guess that was the attempt to try and get as close to that experience as we could. And I think in some of those sequences, which are, you know, ostensibly very, that look hard, you know, in a way, aren't as, because we were very, in a way, we were very deep down the rabbit hole at that point as well. And I think the focus on set in those times was so high that I feel that we were sort of in there to try and tell the story, and that's the kind of privilege of that as well as anything, that you know, we can really just that attempt basically to just reveal even a fraction, just a tiny fraction of what was possibly happening there, that, you know, that Solomon wrote about and talked about. And of course, you know, with myself and Lupita, you know, we really did think on that day that we were, you know, dancing with spirits, and that you know, that people went through these experiences, and would they sort of, if we could sort of dance with them, if they could sort of help us through it in a way.
You had a question in the back there, yeah. Yes, you.
Thank you. What kind of dialogue do you hope to generate from the film?
Someone else answer.
I think when you tell a story, we always tell stories for the public, the whole community, in hopes that they will either be reflective, somehow engaged with each other. We tell them stories for the health of the whole tribe. But when you are in the process of creating that story, you never go there. You try to stay in the moment as purely as you can, whatever the discipline is, whether it is writing, whether it is acting, whether it is Sean or anybody else on the set. But in the aftermath, what we found is our audiences abroad and around the country have had such intense experiences that they've wanted to start to talk about it. So we've come to understand, although that wasn't the intention of the film, it is falling into a space, into a void, especially in contemporary culture, of needing to find a common language or a reference point to start to talk about a lot of things. And so I think that's the great gift, a byproduct, besides being a cinematic masterpiece, I think that Steve has given us, with everybody's, muscle in on it, is that we also have another chance at language that we can discuss the fact that we're all related, seriously related.
I mean, for me, it's the book. I mean, 12 Years a Slave, when my wife found this book, for me, it's about getting into schools. I mean, I live in Amsterdam, and when I read that book for the first time, it was like the first time I read Anne Frank's diary, and I wondered to myself, why isn't this book, on everyone's bookshelf? Why isn't Solomon Northup? I mean, no one knew 12 Years a Slave when I found the book. No one knew who this person was that I knew. And for me, it's a classic. It should be in every school. People should be reading it because it's obvious. That's the mission of the film, if anything.
I'm afraid we only have time for a couple more questions. I don't want to... Yes, you right there.
The subject matter is obviously really, really intense, and I had read that you had rehearsed certain scenes and certain parts with the actors you had available, but obviously, what you finally captured is at a whole nother level. And I wondered if you could talk about the process by what you looked for and what you looked to achieve or explore in a rehearsal versus in the final, in finally shooting it on location and stuff like that.
Thank you.
2 mics.
Yes. Well, we didn't rehearse heavily, and that was something that proved to be very useful. I mean, I think I had about a 15-minute rehearsal with Michael, offset, that is, and another 15-minute rehearsal with Chiwetel. And really, I think what was so great about working with Steve is that he works with actors that he trusts, and he creates an environment that you feel safe to risk things. And he says fail and then fail better. So you get into this, you get on set, and we definitely rehearse on set. And him and Sean Bobbitt are so seamless that they work around the actors. So really you feel in charge of the scene. We all felt very in charge of the scenes. And we felt free to play. Yeah.
Okay, one last question. Yes.
Hi, I actually hadn't heard of the book until I heard about your movie around a year back. Yeah. No, so I was curious. This is kind of like a dual question for both you and John. In terms of the book, I'm sure there was so much material to choose from in telling this story. And I was curious, how do you select that material and integrate it into this film? What did you cut out? What did you decide to keep? And for what reasons?
I would say, first, if you haven't read the book, you should, because it is the complete story. For me personally, and we had long conversations, Steve and I, about the book, I think the point was to be reductive as opposed to additive. We could not put everything in, but as opposed to adding things that were not there and were not true and were not part of the story. For me personally, as the writer, I just wanted to try to have an invisible hand as much as possible, to insert myself as little as necessary, and then hopefully execute at the highest degree that I possibly could.